Everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Monday, and that means I want to talk about Qiyana today. She did come out last week. I know none of you guys noticed because Teamfight Tactics was available, and that's what everybody was doing on her release day, but she has been out for at least a couple of days. She's actually had less time than I expected, as she didn't release right on Wednesday. In fact, I don't think she even came out until Thursday or Friday. So she's had a bit more of a limited period of time to play her in because of her somewhat later release time, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I do think that it made sense for Riot to kind of split up her release, or nobody was going to play the champion if she came out on the same day as Teamfight Tactics. Now, I do want to start by saying I do think Qiyana is quite fun. A lot of people have not really been playing her, and for good reason, I think, because there's been so much other stuff going on. And a lot of people have kind of forgotten even that Qiyana is, still in the game, that she's still kind of running around and doing stuff. But she is actually quite fun. I think especially the biggest thing for me is that this is an assassin whose mobility tools are limited. But that leads to more interesting gameplay. And here's why. Essentially, if you're Zed and you can put your shadow wherever you want, you don't really have to think about it carefully. All you have to do is just throw your shadow at the guy, teleport to it, and boom, you're in the fight. You don't have to worry about it after that. Qiyana, meanwhile, doesn't have that ability to sort of brute force something. She really has to be playing with her head, and that leads to a more interesting design. If you want to be trying to get in on an enemy, you have to be thinking about what your capabilities actually are. So, for example, casting your E to a minion, throwing your Q, then Wing to a nearby piece of terrain in order to land another Q and stay in range of your opponent. Or Eing in and using your W back out. Or Wing in and then Eing back through a minion wave to get out. Suffice to say, there are a bunch of different options for what you can do with Qiyana's mobility, but they require you to be a lot more heads up than just press your mobility spell in the direction of the enemy and you'll get there. So I do actually quite like that. I think it is an example of, restrictions breed creativity and makes the champion feel a lot more fun to play than just, yeah, I'm Zed, I can just kind of hit the button and I get there. I think the W is really the core of Qiyana's kit. I felt myself honestly maxing it second in a couple of these games because it really does feel good to have that ability always off cooldown, especially because of the mobility output it provides. It's Qiyana's only pseudo untargeted mobility spell, so unlike with her E, which you have to have an enemy target to dash to, you have the ability to just kind of W to something nearby. If it's a wall, if it's river, if it's brush, you have a lot more options for what you can do with the W. So I ended up maxing that second, especially because having that off cooldown more often really does help you get your element up and going more quickly. And I think that's really important given that her Q sort of throws her element away. So especially taking stone in lane, it really feels like you're able to kind of throw that at your opponent, get some really good damage down, and then hop to a nearby wall, get some more stone juice, and then use that again. So I actually do quite like that particular aspect of Qiyana's kit. And the other thing the W does is it really gives you opportunity for outplays. Being able to think, especially in the right scenarios, such as a river skirmish, what do I want for this scenario? Because you could take stone for additional damage, but sometimes you want brush, so you can get that stealth field and really go for some kind of sneaky play, or go for the water buff in order to stun somebody. It gives Qiyana this sort of flexibility that a lot of other assassins don't have. She feels very similar to Echo in that regard, and that a lot of her kit isn't raw damage, it's more utility and something else going on. So she, even if she falls behind, there is something that Qiyana can provide her team with. And speaking of utility, her ultimate, I really thought it was going to be bad, but it ends up being actually surprisingly good, I have to say. It doesn't feel particularly terrible to me personally. Obviously, if you don't get any of the stuns, it doesn't do a whole lot for you, but especially in skirmishes that happen around in the river or in the jungle, you really can get some high value from the ultimate because the radius on the explosion is actually quite large. The other thing this does is in tower dive scenarios, if you just ult the tower, usually enemy champions, the first thing they try to do is hug the tower, stand right by it, because that way you have to stay directly underneath the thing that's killing you. But Qiyana can just ult the tower, stun you underneath it, get the damage, and then go in for the kill. And that, to me, is really, really big. Obviously, it won't matter too much once people sort of figure it out that you can't just stand under tower against a Qiyana. But for the moment, at least, I thought that was a really interesting thing to experiment with. Like I said, it does also give her a lot more team utility, especially in these sort of river skirmishes, being able to stun entire enemy teams, knock them up, get some damage down, and then your team can sort of capitalize on that. So again, even if Qiyana falls behind, she does have this option available to her. Now, this does mean, of course, that Qiyana's damage is quite low. Her time to kill and her damage aren't very good for an assassin. When you think about somebody like Zed, who pretty much presses R and then tries to land all of his abilities, and if he does, you basically die. Qiyana doesn't really have that. First, she feels a lot more like a Kali in that she's going to be using her mobility to get resets, to stay in range of somebody. She wants to be weaving in auto attacks. She wants to be getting multiple Qs on a target before she's really able to kill them. Now, the advantage Qiyana has over Akali is that her ultimate lets her brute force a little bit more because she can kind of throw out the ultimate. If it gets the stun, then she's able to really follow up with the audacity, get some damage down. But it does mean that she has a long time to kill if she's not going to just press all of her buttons and instantly kill the enemy champion. So it does limit what she can do somewhat. The other thing for me is that she doesn't really have the ability to sort of brute force things. I know I just kind of said that with the ultimate. Because it knocks enemies away, it means that Qiyana doesn't just get to press R and go in. She really needs to be thinking about what the terrain is and how she can use that to her advantage. It's one of the reasons I think Qiyana is actually a bad jungler. I think her clear is already pretty bad, but she just doesn't have the ability to actually make a gank happen. Unlike a lot of other junglers who can kind of come in, like Sejuani, for example, who has the Arctic Assault, she has the ability to, at the very least, dash in range for a W slow. If she's able to get her ally getting a couple auto attacks in, then there's a stun to follow up on that. There are quite a few options that Sejuani has to make a gank happen. Qiyana doesn't. Even post 6, Qiyana really has to make sure that the enemy is clinging to a wall in order to actually do anything. Otherwise, her ult may just knock them to safety. And besides that, what is she going to do? If she casts her W in order to get in range of throwing Q or getting an E to an enemy, then she doesn't have that to reset her Q and get more damage down, which drastically limits the amount she can do in a gank scenario. It just really feels like Qiyana doesn't offer anything to her team from the jungle. I don't think she'll be played top either. She's just too squishy. She doesn't have the sustain in order to really deal with a lot of top lane champions. She's sort of like Zed top. Like, yeah, okay, Zed top can definitely carry a game if he ends up against someone who's squishier and snowballs off of them because they're not respecting him, but it really does feel like for the most part that Zed will end up against somebody who's too durable for him to kill, who also does enough damage to kill the Zed, and that's kind of where Qiyana feels like if she's top. So I really do feel like she'll be a mid lane exclusive champion. There is a possibility that she might actually see play as a support. Now, I did only have one game with a Qiyana support. We were into a passive lane, so I'm not entirely saying, oh yeah, Qiyana support, it's the next big thing, tell your friends. But it's a possibility. She does have utility. She does have other things she can do with her life other than just raw damage. So if she does fall behind, she has some utility by getting river buff on her W and then going for stuns. She does have the option of using her ultimate in order to knock people back, set up tower dives, that sort of a thing. So I do actually think Qiyana does have some options here, potentially in lane, in the supporting lane. But for the most part, I do feel like she is going to be a mid laner. I think the biggest problem is because her competition mid is so tough, there are so many other assassins that I think do her job better. If you want a utility assassin, you just pick somebody like Echo. If you want a champion with high time to kill, but also with better mobility, you take Akali. If you want a champion that doesn't have high time to kill, that can just hit their buttons and kill the guy instantly, you pick Talon or Zed. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of room for Qiyana to really expand her boundaries and really become a champion that a lot of people are familiar with and a champion that people want to add to their wheelhouse. So we'll see. I do think she has some options like I was talking about, but so far I don't think she's even in a bad spot balance wise. I think she's actually probably right where she wants to be. Maybe a little bit on the weak side. I'm not going to entirely say, oh yeah, Qiyana, she's super weak, she needs a buff. She might be on the weak side. I think she's right where she wants to be. I think at this point we're really just waiting on the player base to sort of learn her and figure her out. It is unfortunate timing for her release because of the whole Teamfight Tactics coming out. A lot of people aren't playing League of Legends, they're playing Teamfight Tactics, so that does affect how many people are playing Qiyana and how many people are willing to put in the time to learn Qiyana when there's this other shiny new game mode that people are trying out and playing instead. So there is that sort of going against her, but I would expect her to be in the patch notes probably in about a month or so. She might receive buffs, she might not, we'll have to see. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Let me know what you guys think of Qiyana down in the comment section below, how you've been building her, what you think of her, where you think she can play. Go ahead and let me know all of that down in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, check out my blogs, linked down the description. I upload articles about League of Legends, competitive scene, casual scene, all sorts of different stuff, so go ahead and check that out if you're interested in more content. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.